Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the CI Chit Chat. I'm Mitchell Hora. I'm the founder and CEO here at Continuum, joined by Jessica. She's our VP of Sales, and we're up in Minnesota here today. Got an event going on. Going to be running free CI scores with the Clean River Partners. They're a water quality group up here in Minnesota, but also tag team with the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition, helping farmers to get their CI scores and make sure that they're ready to rock and roll when it um, comes to the CI thing. Making sure more people know about what's going on, make sure that they're ready to rock and roll on their CI scores here. So we've got like 250 people that are supposed to show up today. We'll see. I know the weather is going to keep some away, but nonetheless, it's going to be a busy day. So anyway, to tee things up as we always do, starting from the beginning here, and then we'll jump into a variety of things. But to tee things up, what the heck is carbon intensity? Carbon intensity, or CI, is essentially the carbon footprint per bushel. So think every single pass across the field has a carbon footprint. You're burning fuel, you're using fertilizer, manure, tillage. Every single pass across the field has a carbon footprint to it. You take that divided by the yield that comes off that field. So the carbon footprint per acre divided by the yield coming off essentially gives you your carbon intensity. This is done utilizing the GREET model, is developed by the Department of Energy. And at Continuum Ag, we built that into our software to make it really easy to run your CI score utilizing topsoil. And that's our software, topsoil.ag. So running those like crazy. We've been tracking towards our billion bushel challenge. A little spoiler alert for all you guys. We're going to be hitting the 200 million bushel mark any day. Like, very good chance we hit it here today with running all these scores up here in Owatonna. But amazing to see that effort just go crazy. So it's been a lot of fun. Those CI, a lot of farmers are interested. We're getting still like 200 new farmers a week right now.
Yeah, yeah, at least.
Jess has unlimited phone calls for her
Yes.
and for the rest of her team to keep calling on folks and making sure that we're helping them out. But so much interest in this because of the 45Z tax credit. It's part of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's due to start on January 1st. So fuel being produced next year, which is going to be produced with the crop that we are going to grow this year. That's why we got to get our data put together, because our carbon footprint this year is going to impact the carbon footprint of those gallons of biofuel. So we got to get our data organized and start building connections with our
Hey guys, it's
biofuel
Gator
friends.
Jack.
And so the one of those biofuel friends we get to give a special highlight to here today. Siouxland Energy, out in Sioux Center, Iowa, over in Jess's neck of the woods. They We just announced a partnership with them last week. So thanks to Siouxland for really just taking charge and saying, hey, we know we got to get this going. We got to get more farmers on board, knowing what's going on. So Siouxland Energy, you can check it out on our website, or maybe Diana can give a little plug in the chat for our Siouxland Energy announcement. But essentially, what this means is Siouxland Energy knows that they want to work with farmers when it comes to 45Z. There's no promises being made. There's no details because we're still waiting for the IRS rules, but they want to start the ball rolling and make farmers aware. And at Continuum Ag, it's our job to score the farmers and get them verified. But Jess, maybe turn it over to you. Your thoughts kind of on that. What have you seen even just from that time? Obviously, there's been a lot of hesitation from farmers when it comes to, well, is my ethanol plant going to do this? And now there's of course a ton of verbal commitments and a lot of people verbally saying, yeah, we want to do something. But now more companies actually really putting it in writing and saying, no, we're really looking at this. We need farmers, and we need farmers to help us out. But I
hmm
guess your thoughts, and what have you heard so far?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think it answers like a big question that farmers have is my ethanol plant participating? although they still have some questions themselves about how much they're going to pay out. They just have shown the intent of buying CI certified bushels,
Yep.
which means farmers have a place to take them for sure. And I really think it's in the prime area where there's a bunch of ethanol plants around that it's going to be the first one to fall and continue to make that market happen for growers.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more of them teed up. I can't disclose who, but been having just tons and tons of conversations with ethanol plants, with grain elevators, with other strategic partners. For those of you that are on the meeting here, would love to get these kind of deals put together with you as well, and just make sure that your farmers have some clarity that you're paying attention to this, you're working on it. No promises, right? We don't have the IRS rules. It could be a big fat zero still, but we don't know. And the only way that we're going to be ready is if we've got the data organized and we've got a volume of bushels ready to go. And that's what we're doing here. So shout out to Siouxland once again for really being innovative, getting that going, and excited to keep pulling farmers together. So if you know farmers that are in that Sioux County area or the surrounding counties, would love to get them involved in this. Toss them over that link, and there's more info as they navigate through and get a discount on their CI scores and get them set up, ready to rock and roll for this awesome project. So, Jess, anything else to tee up on your side? And Jess was on a couple weeks ago.
I don't know.
Without going into a bunch of details, but
Yeah, basically just a lot of excitement and a lot of farmers wanting to learn more. And that's all we really want is to really educate them and hopefully start getting their bushel certified.
yep. All right, we had a ton of questions come in this week. What do we got first?
Who pays the premium for low CI bushels, and how do you know if a biofuel producer is doing that or they will be required to if receiving 45Z
Yeah.
credits?
So I mean, ties in perfect what we were just talking, right? So who pays? Ultimately, it's tax credit money going to the biofuel producer. So it's a clean fuel production tax credit. That's the name of the credit. So the fuel producer gets the credit. So in the case that we were just talking, Siouxland, or this is talking about biodiesel. So the biodiesel refiner, the actual producer, they get the tax credit. They then pass it on down the chain. So in the case of Siouxland, we use them as our buddies on this. Siouxland has potential to lower their carbon intensity score and earn tax credits. Best case scenario from the law itself is that they would earn 2 cents per CI point reduced per gallon of production. And that's based on a baseline CI of 50. The problem is nobody's paying this right now because the tax credit doesn't start until January 1. As we get closer to the end of the year and companies are starting to procure that low carbon corn, there might be some potential for premiums later this year, but we don't know. We don't know when the rules are going to be written. And at this point, they're definitely still not. Now, I did have a little birdie tell me yesterday that there's potential for the new CI or the new GREET model to come out on Friday. There was a new GREET model that was supposed to be released on March 1st with the EPA and Vilsack being down at Commodity Classic, and that was supposed to be this big to-do, releasing the new GREET model. They punted, and little birdie told me potential for this Friday to release. So a Good Friday release of the GREET model. There's a lot of snarky like kind of comments stuff that I could make about that, but I won't. And we will see. Hopefully the Easter Bunny is coming early. Huh?
Yeah, that's what we can hope.
Sorry to Jess's bunnies. Jessica's a jackrabbit. Went to South Dakota State and our cyclones whooped on her bunnies the other day.
It's
So
okay.
another bunny reference for you, Jess. But anyway, so in your biofuel plant, none of them have announced that they're gonna none of them have announced what exactly they're going to pay. There's pilot projects going on, paying anywhere from 2 cents a bushel on up. But you need to just be contacting them and go into there with a empathetic, uh, just an approach of like, hey, let's work on this together, right? A collaborative approach. We would love to be part of those conversations. At some point, we will likely build some type of a price discovery tool so that you can see the companies that we have preferred partnerships with and you can see what the bids are, what the companies are paying. But that won't happen anytime real soon. But you can at least be contacting your elevator, contacting your biofuel producer, not saying, hey, I want $1, or hey, Mitch says there's big money in this. No, it's as farmers, we can be producing the low carbon crop, and they can collaborate with us to bring some of these dollars to our rural communities. It's got to be collaborative, and we would love to help be part of that conversation. What
Yeah.
else we got?
So how can growers really advocate this if their ethanol plant isn't really supporting it yet?
Yeah, so I mean, it's going in there again with that empathetic approach. There's been too much folks going in to the ethanol plant saying, "Hey, these Continuum Ag guys are talking about this tax credit and they're talking big numbers. What are you guys going to pay?" Well, they don't know that yet. And the dollars that we're talking are the total potential tax credit dollars. We have no idea what the farmer is going to be paid. And we try to be as brutally honest on that as we can. We have no idea if you're going to get paid, what the dollars are going to be. Nobody has released anything yet, and they won't announce or release anything until we get the IRS rules. So it's just about, though, going to the biofuel producer saying, hey, I know that this is coming down the pipe. I know that you don't have all the rules and you don't have any certainty yet, but hey, on the farm, I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to get my data organized. I'm willing to get it certified. And these Continuum Ag guys are going to help me to do it. They've got a third party verifier. It's going to be all legit. And just going in there with a collaborative approach saying, hey, farmers can help you to do this. And let's get more farmers built up. What it's going to take is having more than just your individual farm. We got to have the neighbors on board too, right? We got to have a volume of low
Mhm.
carbon bushels. And obviously, that's what we're seeing, some pretty cool things being built on that. And more farmers just spreading the word and sharing. And if you got a good dealers tie in too. You want to maybe explain that a little bit on kind of some of your role too on working with dealers and our agronomic network.
Yeah, exactly. So we have two kind of ways of selling and getting to growers. The first one is dealers. So we're working on building out a tool on our website eventually where you can see your nearest dealer. And then also we do a direct to grower front. So if you want to find your nearest dealer or work with us, you are more than welcome to reach out to us at sales at Continuum, or we also have a sales number that's on our website.
Yeah, so adding more and more of those dealers all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they can connect with you. And really, it's about we keep hiring people like crazy, but it's still there's local folks that already have a lot of this data that are already helping farmers. We want to collaborate with you, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And we'd
Mm-hmm.
much rather work with those local relationships that are already out there. A real quick one here, just from the chat, Matt saying, hey, is there any way to get a draft made to email to our local ethanol plants to express their interest in 45Z? This is a really good idea, Matt. Diana, let's do like put together just something super basic in terms of, hey, there's information going on, inviting them to these CI Chit Chats, or showing them to our YouTube page where we have tons of material on our YouTube page about all this. But Matt, maybe or Diana, maybe message Matt direct to make sure that we get his email. But yeah, pretty good idea that we could get some more stuff put out there that you could be sharing along. Um, I've personally met with over 100 ethanol plants already. So, I mean, I'm trying and pounding the pavement like crazy. I had to get new tires on my truck last week because I've done over 20,000 miles on my truck already so far this calendar year, going and meeting with these folks and trying to help and educate them. But yeah, really good idea that we can put together some basic info that could be
Mm-hmm.
sent to more of these folks at the ethanol plant or the co-ops too, the ag retailers, the elevators. They really need to get on this. They have a huge role to play, but I love that.
Yeah, so this question kind of comes from a person who works at a biodiesel plant, saying it appears the blender's tax credit may not be renewed for the upcoming year. This implies we may potentially rely on the Inflation Reduction Act. Consequently, we are keen to understand how CI works to prepare ourselves for the potential change.
Yeah, so big change, right? It used to be a blender's tax credit where it's just a flat dollar, a dollar per gallon, is I believe what it's currently at. and things are going to change where it's not just, hey, you get a credit just strictly based on producing biofuel, but now it's going to be about how you're producing it and how you are lowering that score. So basically, what's going to end up being is this biodiesel manufacturer, you're going to need to know what is your CI score of your fuel. So that's step number one, figuring out what is your score, right? Just like what we do with farmers on the ground. What's your score today? Then that biodiesel manufacturer needs to figure out what's the CI according to, or what's the CI coming from their soybean oil. And then therefore working with their crusher to figure out, okay, what's your footprint and what's your CI of that oil. And in order to get that, they're going to need to go to the soybean producer, the farmers, and figure out what is their footprint because the footprint of the soybeans themselves are part of the footprint of the oil, which is part of the footprint of the biodiesel. So, the company called Eco Engineers, we recommend contacting them or contacting whoever you work with on other LCFS markets. They can help you to calculate your gallon level carbon intensity score, but absolutely encourage you. We're happy to help and collaborate to help to track back to the farm to at least get the bushels scored, get them ready to go. We do run CI scores for soybeans. We run it for corn. I was just out in Kansas last week. We got a project where we got to do some scoring on milo, sorghum, but other crops will be added in the future. But we can do this on soybean. So we'd love to chat with you and help you to track that back to the farm. That's really how you get ready for this. So a couple of these in the chat, some good questions coming in. Appreciate that. Michael's asking, does spraying with a drone improve your score given the fuel savings? And yeah, so a little bit from the reduction in the diesel fuel, but whether you're spraying with a Haggy or spraying with a drone, that doesn't go into the equation, but the fuel used and the amount of pesticide used, that does go into the equation. So reducing your fuel by a little bit, reducing your pesticide by a little bit, that will help improve your score, but it's going to be very, very minimal. Okay. It's going to be very minimal, but go to topsoil and run scenarios with kind of both scenarios, right? Where you can run the scenario based on a set amount of fuel and fertilizer and see what your score is. And then you can recalculate again, looking at the reduction of fuel and of the pesticide and show you the reduction. But it's going to be pretty minimal. Thoughts on that? This does come up every once in a while.
Yeah, I was at an event yesterday where they took off your LP gas and it affected about 2 points, increased it about 2 points. So it's not a huge drastic change if you have to dry that grain. So I feel like that's something that's reassuring, especially as we don't really anticipate fall delivery for low CI grain just because ethanol plants might not have that much storage.
Well, whether it be storage or just how aggressive they're going to be at procuring that. And we're still waiting for the rules. So we'll see how that all continues to shape up. But again, all we can do is get our data organized at this point. Jim, excellent question. Is the calculation 2 cents per bushel or 2 cents per gallon? And in the law, it's laid out as up to 2 cents per gallon, 2 cents per gallon per point. So essentially, and it's based on a baseline of 50. So we use 29.1 as a typical baseline on the county level for corn's CI score. But in reality, every single county is a little bit different. We like to use 29.1 to keep consistency. But like Washington County, Iowa, for example, where I farm, it's at 29.4. So every county is a little bit different. The 2 cents per gallon is the important part. The biofuel producer gets the tax credit, and they get the tax credit of up to 2 cents per point reduced per gallon. And it's up to 2 cents because they have to meet some red tape. There's a prevailing wage program, a registered apprenticeship program. There's some red tape that these ethanol plants or biofuel producers, they have to meet this red tape in order to get the full tax credit of 2 cents per CI point per gallon. And so essentially what will happen is that the ethanol plant will report their CI score at the end of 2025 and they get 2 cents for every point that they are below the baseline of 50. So, say for example, at the end of 2025, their score ends up being 40 as a weighted average of the entire year's production. Their score ends up being 40. Since that's 10 points below the baseline of 50, they would earn 20 cents per gallon as long as they meet prevailing wage registered apprenticeship, and they need to be working with their CPA firm to do that now. We work with RSM and KPMG. There's others that you can work with as well, but happy to make some intros to the folks at those two big CPA firms. But anyway, so it's 2 points per gallon. And then to figure out, okay, well, what's the impact that a bushel makes? You take that 2 points, 2 cents per gallon, multiplied by the individual ethanol plant's conversion of bushels to gallons. So we utilize the conservative approach of 2.7 gallons per bushel. So take the 2 cents per gallon, multiply by 2.7 gallons per bushel, gives us 5.4 cents per point per bushel. Most ethanol plants are actually closer to 3 gallons per bushel, meaning that every point that you reduce for most of those ethanol plants is actually worth about 6 cents per CI point per bushel. The problem is, and where we get ourselves in trouble here, is the mass majority of ethanol plants, like 95% of them, they're not at that baseline of 50 or below at this point. A lot of them are close, but there's plenty of plants that are far from that magic number of 50. So those first couple points of reduction might not actually get you in the money. The ethanol plant isn't in the money until they get below 50. That's why when we go meet with them, we ask, what is your CI score today? Using the Argonne GREET model, not California, not Canada. What's your Argonne GREET CI score? And what's your conversion from bushels to gallons? And utilizing that, we can really dial in the numbers for the ethanol plant. But 2 cents per gallon, multiply that by your conversion from bushels to gallons, that shows the potential in the value for what the farmers are bringing to the table. And then out of that value, we anticipate the pie is going to be big enough that people can share and have a slice of it for the work that they are bringing to the table. Real quick on Jackie's question there, does this complement EQIP? It absolutely does. What we are saying is that you probably aren't going to be able to stack a carbon credit program and a carbon intensity program because those are both outcome-based programs, and a company would be kind of double counting on the carbon. But you can absolutely get paid for the practice and have somebody buy the carbon outcome. So yeah, EQIP or any other cost share program or even a private program that's paying for the practice, a sustainability program, as long as they aren't taking a claim on the carbon outcome, you're good. Now, I am hearing companies that are saying that their verifier, their registry, their buyer, they are going to allow for somebody to do a carbon credit and then have a low carbon bushel going into carbon intensity. So there might be some opportunity to stack, but to me, I think that's stretching it a little bit. And I'm just not willing to risk it, at least on my farm and at least how I'm communicating to farmers. 45Z and low carbon bushels going into low carbon fuel, the dollars are just too big to risk it and screw it up. But if you're in a program, if you sell your grain and feed hogs or export it or something, there's a lot of other carbon inset or carbon offset programs that you can participate in, even if you don't have a market for CI at this point. But this comes up a lot. What's your thoughts on that?
Also, if there's a look back program, not directly looking at the 2024 crop, then you can stack them as they're not on the same growing year. But I also think I see the impact every day on what a cover crop does on a CI score. And I think that's a huge place to maybe get paid to put on cover crops while also having it reduce your score significantly.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Some of those look back things. We did a project last year that was 2023 only, and it was awesome. So yeah, definitely a good idea. Okay, so our buddy Mr. Cluster Cluck, Zach Smith. Appreciate you being on, Zach. We will I'm assuming I'll see you here this week in Mason City at the Ag Ventures Alliance meeting. But what's a realistic timeline for the rules and the GREET updates, if that emerges in the next 2 weeks. What's a realistic timeline for an ethanol plant being able to organize and figure out their plan for how they're going to operate with this? There's a big spread. Some ethanol plants are already really on top of this. Like we got one of our ethanol plants that we're working with. They're already doing carbon capture, and they're already working on buyers for the tax credits. Like they're not going to be actually selling these credits until 2026. They're already working on offtake agreements for the tax credits themselves. Like very on top of this, very much getting it figured out. Some other plants are hardly paying attention, and they're just completely sitting on the sidelines, waiting for the rules to be handed to them. We're trying to be proactive and get people to understand and get people to be aggressive and be on top of this. But in reality, I would anticipate, say we get a GREET update here in the next couple of weeks. That's going to give us some clarity, especially when it comes to indirect land use change, which I've talked about in the past. But that's going to be one of the big things that happens with this new GREET update is clarity on indirect land use change. And if things look good, I do anticipate there'll be a lot more ethanol companies at least saying, like what Siouxland did, hey, we think there's going to be some opportunity here. We want to get folks going. The new rules that will come out in the coming weeks likely won't give us 100% clarity on 45Z. The bigger release of rules is going to be about 40B. 40B is sustainable aviation fuel and SAF only. 45Z likely won't be released yet. I have no idea when it's going to happen. Call it this summer, call it this fall, call it even into next year. We have no idea when those rules are going to be out. But really, what it starts with is no matter what, we get the new GREET model, we can at least start running scores for that supply shed area. We can at least start running scenarios as to what the ethanol plant CI score is going to be. And we have a scenario built out where we can show them how much participation will you need to be able to get in the money. And we have a financial model all built out where we can sit down with ethanol plants to show them how the financials will work. But I don't anticipate that there will be real initiatives rolled out by the ethanol plants until later on this year at the earliest. And that's going to be based on when we get the final IRS rules. But again, way too long answers on this whole thing here today. I apologize. But nonetheless, these ethanol plants can at least start educating their farmers and getting the bushel scored and getting people aware that they need to be keeping really good records this year. It's got to go through verification.
Mm-hmm. And the earlier you start that process, the way easier it is, as most of it is a big data lift.
Yeah. Steve, to figure out CI, do we enter cover crop plant in the fall of 23 or do we wait and record what we plant in 2024? Nope. Steve, you've got it. It's fall of 2023 because that cover crop is part of this 2024 crop year program, right? So your cover crop that you planted last fall is part of this program, just like the fertilizer you put on last fall, the tillage you did last fall, the manure you did last fall. So basically think of this harvest to harvest. It's whatever the program was on the 2024 crop. That is what we are documenting here. Because once you harvest your corn, call it October of 2024, then you plant your cover crop in the fall. Well, it therefore cannot impact the CI of those bushels of corn because you already harvested the bushels and then you plant the cover crop afterwards. So what happened in the fall of 2023, we need to be documenting now, which is why we're pushing on this so much, even without all of the clarity. We got to get this data documented. We got to get ourselves organized. And that's why we're getting this going. And we charge $5 to help you do it. But like, gosh darn, there is so much upside opportunity. We've got to get that going here now. Great stuff from Jim on this RCPP. You can speak to that. We are looking really deep into this. So Jim's asking, there's a RCPP led by American Coalition for Ethanol, or ACE, and they're going to be paying farmers for practices for adopting new practices and sharing some of their data. It's to be available in the grain sheds. I love that. There we go, grain sheds. I call it supply shed, but I love that, Jim. Supply sheds for 13 ethanol plants and counties that touch those ethanol plants. This might be one way to stack practice payments with CI. You're absolutely right, Jim. we have been looking at this RCPP very much so. Dean from our agronomy team was at the meeting. I know, Jess, you've been looking into it. I met with the guys at ACE as well. This RCPP, it is very uh, targeted, right? So it's targeted directly around these 13 ethanol plants and the counties that surround those ethanol plants. Now, it's a fairly limited scope that they're going to be able to do. Like each plant only gets like a couple thousand acres, so it's actually relatively small as we've dug into it, but still an amazing opportunity for farmers that are wanting to make a change. Brian's asking, who are those ethanol plants? Go to ethanol. I think it's ethanol.org. Maybe, Diana, maybe you can help us out. So, American Coalition for Ethanol's website, I believe it's ethanol.org. And there's a page on there about this grant and about this RCPP. And it has maps for every single state that's participating. And it shows you the counties and it lists them all out. And it lists out the financials available as well. But anyway, so if you want to participate in this program, it is looking for new practices for by and large. There's a small thing for farmers that have already done it, but for the most part, it's about new practice change. It's a 5-year program though. 5 years. You've got to keep to the practices, but it's a pretty serious money. I think cover crop was 40 some, maybe 50 some bucks an acre. I don't recall exactly now, but some pretty serious money for adding cover crops, reducing tillage, changing your fertilizer management program. Um, but yeah, Diana, if you can find that. But yeah, Jim, that RCPP, an amazing way to get the ball rolling. Again, it's a pay for practice, not a pay for the outcome. And it just really scares me to try to double dip in two different outcome based things. But if we can get farmers paid for the practice, maybe I'm seeing some of the ethanol plants too saying, hey, we'll even maybe get a grant or cover some of the cost for the data. We've got an ethanol plant that they got their farmers a grant, and they're going to cover some of the costs of CI certification. So just really trying to help to that lower that barrier to entry, right? So yeah, Diana's got the link there that lays out the counties that are available. All right, maybe one more here. Diana got for us. Does each individual ethanol plant need to stand on its own, or can an ethanol plant in an area with good CI scores buy and offset an ethanol plant that cannot get the bushels with good CI? Thinking Poet in Glenville, Minnesota, offsetting Poet in Hanalatown, Iowa, or vice versa. Really, really interesting question here. So essentially, the concept being these folks in further north in Minnesota, cover crop and no tilling, it's tougher, right? And it's not nearly as adopted versus some of our different places down in Iowa or get over in Nebraska, Kansas, we see some really low CI scores. So the question being, can we swap and trade and get a little creative here? That's one of the things that I have heard that they are talking about in DC, where basically the concept would be decoupling the CI score from the individual bushel. So therefore, the credits or the CI, reductions could be traded. I don't know that it would be between two different ethanol plants, but I could see it being low carbon corn goes to feed pigs, like most of my corn does. My corn goes to feed pigs, and then the CI score goes with that physical bushel, right? But then the CI score is then sold and traded between the pork producer and the ethanol plant, where the low carbon corn physically went and fed pigs, the high carbon corn physically went into the ethanol plant, but we swap papers essentially, and there can be payments exchanged for that. There's potential that could be rolled out here now. That would absolutely allow for um, plants in worse CI areas. It would allow them to participate a little bit more. Could work for dairy as well. Yep. So it'd be if you're chopping silage, feeding to the dairy cows, or at least like the grain or high moisture corn. I don't know. I would assume on silage, but uh, the real answer here is we don't know yet though either. This is just something that I know that they were talking about in the cross departmental working group that's putting together the rules in DC. they were talking about this ability to decouple. I think chances are relatively low that it actually happens. But if it does, I could see where it would help and allow at least, I mean, it would directly impact me, on my farm where my corn could still go to feed pigs, but then the pork producer could maybe make a little bit of margin on organizing the data and then selling it to the ethanol plant, so they could make a little bit of margin in on this, and more folks participate. But the problem ends up being, and my concern ends up being, is that when the environmental groups come after us for greenwashing, we're going to have a hard time defending ourselves because it's not actually low carbon fuel that we're producing. We produce low carbon pigs. And like in my instance, we produce low carbon pigs, and then we made the claim on the low carbon fuel, and it's not, it wasn't actually real. So I just, I see where in the short term it could be beneficial. It would solve some problems, but over the long term, I think we get called out for greenwashing. And in the future, those pigs are going to need to keep that data and utilize low carbon corn to feed and produce low carbon pigs. So in the future, those pork producers are going to need to actually do keep that low carbon corn and keep that data so that they can make their own claims. Um, Same as dairy and stuff too. All these different industries are looking to decarbonize. At some point, they're going to need to keep this crop and keep this data in their supply chain, but potential to get a little creative. But again, we don't know the rules. It still all boils down to having the data organized and be ready to rock and roll when we do get 100% clarity. But Jess, I was very long-winded, and I gotta talk like the whole rest of the day too. I apologize, but any other closing thoughts on your side?
Yeah, so if you can't make it to one of the events Mitch or one of the Continuum Ag members are at, we have plenty of resources on our YouTube and also podcasts, Facebook. So if you guys want to learn more, there's plenty of ways that you guys can do that.
A lot of stuff out there. Continuum Mag's social media pages and YouTube and all that. But Jess, thanks for hanging out here this morning. Time to go across town here and go do this event. Thanks everyone for hanging out. We will see you next Tuesday back here on the Chit Chat. We do have a webinar coming up as well, where we're going to be really digging into cover crop management, especially for folks that are going to be adding cover crops because of carbon intensity. Got a professor coming in from University of Wisconsin, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. Nonetheless, have a good one. We'll talk to y'all later.